tuna always forms the basis of my stick mixes, but this time I'm using it in sunflower oil rather than in brine. Brine I'll use in the winter time because when the water's really cold it just disperses into the water that bit better, but when the water's warmed up, it's now beginning of spring, sort of end of March, beginning of April, the water's warm enough now to use the oil, and that just adds to the attraction. Now, rather than tipping the oil away that's already in it, I actually tip it into my pop-up. So I'm using a mix at the moment that's got some tuna in the mix, so I just add that to the pop-ups, rehydrate them in that, and that's going to improve the pulling power of those. The rest of it I'll tip into the boilies that I've actually brought with me. I've only brought probably half a kilo of boilies with me for a 3-day session because we're not putting any bait in at all we're fishing is little bags or little sticks. So pouring it into them, the boilies draw all that tuna smell into them. You can do it on practically any mix and it's going to improve the pulling power of those. And what you'll find after 24 hours, they will have drawn all that oil in, they'll go darker in colour. You can still put them out with a throwing stick and the fish absolutely love them. So the rest of the mix, first of all, that's our lovely stick mix there. The tuna goes in first, smash that up with a fork, and then after that I'll put some pellets in there, and what they'll start to do is soak up all the lovely juice from the tuna as soon as I put them in. These are bloodworm pellets in varying sizes. I found they've got real pulling power. And the next thing is crumbed up boilie. The same boilies I'm using on the hair, I'll just crumb it up in a crusher, probably do 3 or 4 lots of crumb, chuck that in and mix it up again so that all the oil from that tuna is getting soaked into the boilie. And then to dry it out, I'll just use some ground bait over the top. This is a very spicy squid ground bait that I've found absolutely brilliant on these type of waters. And now after about half an hour, it will sort of stick together like that, but it will break apart very, very easily. And it's not wet, it's just sort of moist, so it's not going to melt the PVA, but it's going to have all that attraction pinging out of it, oil's coming up in the water, and there's loads of attraction coming out on the bottom as well. So to put a little stick together, I'm using a long chuck size stick, so very, very slim PVA, and all I'm basically doing is just scraping it up against the side of the bait box, rather than trying to scoop it up in your hand. Just push a little bit of that down into there, and then a little bit more. Okay, that should be about enough. And then our compression stick goes down, and then we just, with the thumb over the end, really push it down tight, and then just push that out the end. And there we go, that's our stick formed. And then very, very simply, pull a load of PVA off, tie it in a simple overhand knot. Just a simple granny knot, and then hold the top of the bag and pull the PVA knot down onto the top of it like that. So I've not wasted any PVA. Do the same thing again, and again hold the PVA where you want the knot to be, just pull it down so you've got 2 knots right next to each other, cut between the 2 there, and then if we bring our system up, knotted at the end so it's ready for the next bag, back into the system so it doesn't get wet, and then lid on, and that's ready to go. And it's very important when you're doing sticks with oil in, if you time up a long time in advance, what will happen is the oil will soak into the PVA and form a barrier, so the PVA won't melt for ages, especially if the water's cold like it is at the moment. Then I wouldn't make them up hours in advance. I'd make them up now, put your little needle through it from one side to the other, and then drag that short hook link back through. Just pull the gate latch over like so. You'll break a little bit of PVA as you go through, but that doesn't matter. And then just carefully pull that round, pull the hook into the end like so, and that is our stick of goodness ready to go. So that's going to get clipped on, wanged out there, and don't be afraid on these sort of waters to recast every 4 or 5 hours at this time of the year. There's no other bait in the swim, and a fresh stick can get you a quick bite.
Well, first bite of the morning. Really, really slow night. I was really surprised. The weather, it just looks so good. It's just textbook perfect. But to be honest, I think the fish had all just backed off the wind, or that's what I had thought. Before it went dark last night, I took the singles off, found one of the deeper silty areas, and put a couple of maggots out. One of my mates came down to see me, and the first thing he said was, "Mate, what are you doing?" He said, apparently the maggots just haven't been working. So I was kind of committed to it by then. The rig was all tied up, it was all balanced. And so I thought, well, I'll put it out anyway, just on the one, and see what happens. So I've put it out, nothing's happened for the night. I must admit, I was a little bit despondent this morning. Like I say, it just looked so good, but it just wasn't happening. So I thought, right, I'll put the singles back on for the day. I've picked one up, my right hand rod, clipped it up, wound it in, changed it over, tied the rig. Just about to do the same with this. I've picked the rod up, put it into the clip, and it's literally, it's pulled practically out of my hand. So, oh, this little fella had picked it up pretty much at the exact same second that I picked it up. So I reckon only one or two are going to go back on the singles for the day, and we're going to leave one on the maggots, get it back in that silty area, and hopefully there's another couple out there. Nice. Right, that's that one all sorted. Another little bag on there. Snails in the pellet. He's all balanced up, ready to go. I'd already clipped that one up. It's come off the same spot I've just had that fish from, so hopefully there's another couple out there. The fish is in the net, he's nice and safe. He's going to get his breath back for a couple of seconds, so I'm going to get this straight back out, and then we'll get him out and have a look at him. Look at that. Beautiful little Sandhurst mirror. Just under the £19, but more than welcome, I tell you, this morning. Look at that. What a lovely fish. I'll tell you what though, truly one of the weirdest bites I've ever had. Just bizarre. I just put it in the clip, gone to wind it in, and before I've had a chance to start winding, it's literally practically pulled the rod out of my hand. Just incredible timing. I reckon another 30 seconds and we wouldn't be looking at him now. But thankfully we are. What a corker.
Good morning. It's the morning after the night before. Nothing happened during the night other than it poured down with rain. It looks brilliant at the moment. I can't understand why there's been no action on this bank, but I have just seen a fish show over the top of the area. So first thing this morning, I think I got picked up by a coot. So I wound that rod in, put a fresh stick on, wanged it back out there, got it out there second cast. It's quite tricky in this crosswind, but we've got this pumping southwesterly coming into us. It's probably 14 degrees. You know, it looks absolutely brilliant. I think Jamie on the other side there has actually been playing a fish or has just landed a fish. So fingers crossed, hopefully we'll get a bite in the next couple of hours.
Look at that. Really lovely, nice, clean, 22.5 common. Beautiful. Another one falling to my really faithful little combi link rig. And the little bright rod ones. Been fantastic for me on here, that rig. Last couple of springs, I've probably caught 40, maybe 50 carp on that rig out of here. And I think I've only lost one to a hook pull. Gonna get the rod whack back out, talk you through exactly how I'll make it.
We're going to look at the all-important rig now that Mr. Fareham has been catching all these lovely Sandhurst carp on. Essentially a pop-up rig.
Yep.
Yeah, but tied a little bit differently from how I've seen before. I know Ali's nicked a few of these little elements off of you,
yeah, all of it.
and made of his own. So talk us through the components, how to tie it, and first of all, why you're using a pop-up on this lake.
Yep. I suppose the main reason I'm using pop-up is because it's a single bait. Because you're not fishing it over any bait,
yep.
Basically the rig and the hook bait is doing all the work. The
yep.
fish aren't finding it through accident as they're feeding on a spot. They're finding it because it's out there, it's on its own, it's bright, it's attractive, you know.
Right.
So the rig has to do all the work for you.
Right.
Over a spreader bait or whatever, you know, you can get away with sort of, you know, other types of rigs, but I think as a single bait, you've got to have a really effective rig.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the main reason I use it.
And what's the boom made of?
The boom is £20 fluorocarbon.
Right.
It's just tied to the ring swivel at this end with just a 4-turn tucked half blood knot.
Right, okay. And how do you get that so neat without kinking the fluorocarbon?
Just really carefully, basically.
Right.
I just tease it down really carefully, like tease the barrel partly tight first, and then kind of tease it back the other way,
right,
if you like. So rather than just tying the loops, putting it through and pulling it down, I pull the barrel and ease the knot together first.
Yep.
and then tease it back towards the swivel.
Right.
Obviously with lots of saliva all
Right.
the time. And just carefully, obviously the last thing you want is a horrible kink in here. You want it to be straight and stiff and nice.
Right.
So,
And what about the connection there, hidden under that putty between the braid and the fluorocarbon? How do you do that?
It's called an Albright knot. It's a little bit tricky to tie, but I think it's well worth the effort. Incredible knot strength. Basically, all you do is you take your stiff boom section, make a loop in the end. You tie your hook to some braid to start with, just with a grinner, and you pass the tag of that through the 2 loops that you've made in this material.
Yep.
You then wrap the braid material 6 times
around both bits of line, because it's looped over. There'll be 2 bits of fluorocarbon there, won't there? Right,
6 times around both of them.
Yep.
And then similar to like a shock leader knot, you go 4 times back down over the barrel.
So back up again towards the top of the loop.
That's it. Yep. You go back through the same way, so you've got both bits of braid going through the loop the same way. All the time you've pinched the hook, because the key to how I fish it is I like to keep them really low to the bottom. I don't want big blatant ones, I want them really low to the bottom.
Okay.
So and I think this is what sometimes people struggle with, to keep it nice and short. So you have to have the hook pinched
literally
really close
to
the knot. Exactly. And then rather than again just tightening it all down, because the knot would spread out as you tightened it.
That braided section would end up an inch long rather than quarter of an inch long.
So what I do is I tease the knot down first, using the tag end of the braid as well. Tease it all down really gently, pushing it up towards the loop, and then tighten it. And it's only, you only get that length as the knot tightens, basically.
Right, okay.
It's all completely tight and
super neat as well. Like everything I notice about everything that you do, not just this, there's a finesse about it, about everything. You probably don't notice it yourself, but everything is just so. The PVA bag is exactly the same size every time.
I guess
these are tied the same. You
it's
know,
just being consistent. Do you know what I mean? I like to know and feel like I understand why I've caught my fish. So I like to keep things consistent. You know, and then I can make small adjustments. I can shorten it a little bit. I can lengthen it a little bit. I can lengthen this. You know, and hopefully I'm understanding why I'm catching my fish.
And the spinning bit at the top there, because you've got tiny little rings.
That's a really big key to this rig. It just gives the bait and the hook an incredible amount of free movement that you would never ever get with a hair that can spin in all different directions. It's basically just a tiny little flexi ring swivel. Obviously the larger ring goes onto the shank of the hook. Stop with a little stop there, and the barrel of the swivel gets pulled into the bait. I put a loop of floss through the top eye on the micro swivel, thread the bait on as you would do it onto a normal hair, and then put it down, so almost all of the swivel, apart from the bottom eye,
is inside the bait.
Hidden inside the bait. Again, it just keeps things neat. You know, it just keeps it nice and tidy.
And then you've got 2 bits sticking out the top then, have you?
That's it. I just get a little bait stop, tie an overhand, just a granny knot, over the top of the bait stop, tie one, tie another one over the top to lock it, trim them, and because this stuff blobs down, you can just blob it with a lighter. As they get to the bottom, just push it down so you flatten them slightly. You can cast 150 yards and it's never coming off. Again, just really neat and tidy and does the job.
Cool. And that's all attached to a very Yately setup. I mean, you know, it seems to be everybody in this area fishes a bit of lead core, helicopter rig, the stopper's just a little bit up from the lead. You know, you're not doing it because it's fashionable. I know you're doing it for a reason. So explain why you're using that.
The main reason really is because I'm using a hook link that's got some stiffness in it. I want that to have a little bit of movement basically, and the rig just isn't going to sit right if it hasn't. If I was fishing this on an inline lead and it was coming out of the nose of the lead, there's every chance that if there's a tiny bit of gravel here or a bit of weed, that hook link is going to sit up off the bottom and it's going to be sat like that because it's coming out of the nose. But because it's on the helicopter, because it's got all this play here, there's much more chance of it sitting, you know, even if there's a little bit there, it's just going to sit much better. And also, you know, I mean, the spot here is a perfect example. It's silt, you know, probably 4, 5, 6 inches deep on the bottom. So I can move that stop just up a little bit. It's going to let that hook link have that little bit of freedom of movement, just so it's going to lay.
The lead can plug and the hook link's still sitting nicely on top of it.
Exactly.
And just a couple of foot of lead core, no more than that?
Not too long. I don't think there's any point using anything longer than about 3 foot really for this. Certainly not for this kind of rig.
So just pinning it all down to the bottom. Very difficult to see other than that lovely bright bit, and that's what's been doing the bites. So, wise words from Mr. Fareham. If you're single hook bait fishing on waters like Sandhurst, that's the thing to use.